I'm Michael Kirby, and I was a Justice of the High Court of Australia, and more recently I've been working on committees for the United Nations. I'm going back to school with Student Edge.
Now, reading your biography, A Private Life, I discovered that you had a particular love for plasticine as a very young child.
Yes, I got a passionate feeling for the taste of it, and I thought that it was better than my mother's cooking. But ultimately I gave away plasticine and other such vices, and I settled down to study, which is what it's important to do at school.
Well, how would you describe yourself as a student growing up?
Not very good at sport, very good at linguistic things, language things, English, history, anything where it involved expressing myself, good at debating, good at plays. And I went to public schools. My entire education was in public schools, the local primary and infant school, and then the opportunity class that we have in New South Wales, and then a selective high school. And I had wonderful education. I'm a great supporter of public education.
Well, I'm assuming you were obviously fairly well behaved, but you did have one run-in with a cane early on.
Yes, and it was a great injustice, and it had a profound effect on me later on because it made me a bit of a softie as far as punishment in the courts was concerned. I actually spilt some ink. In those days, we had no computers, we didn't have even ballpoints, we had inkwells and pen and nib, and I spilt ink on the departmental exercise book. I tore the pages out. The headmaster, who was standing in for our teacher, who was off, saw that the book was light, and he gave me 4 of the best, that for 2 strokes on the left hand and 2 on the right hand. And I kept saying, but he said, no buts, you have torn pages out of the king's property. And so I was punished. Very unfair, very unjust, and it all goes to prove that you should listen to those who you are considering punishing, because sometimes they've got something useful to say.
Well, you went to school in a very interesting time in Australia's history, not just at the end of World War II, but it was during the White Australia policy as well. I'm curious, what kind of racial discrimination did you see at that time?
Well, we didn't see it because it wasn't visible, in the sense that everybody in the class, except one, was a Caucasian child. That was the nature of Australia at the time. We were overwhelmingly an Anglo-Celtic country, and that was in fact instilled in the law, and it made it very difficult for people of other racial groups to get into Australia. There was one exception in my class, Bobby Chong, and he was the only boy in the class, of all boys in those days, who could beat me, and he sometimes came top of the class and I came second, and that was a terrible shock to my ego, but we've kept in touch, and in fact I had lunch with him and his wife, and he has said how difficult it was growing up as a non-Caucasian, as an Asian person in Australia at that time, and how people had prejudice. Prejudice is based on ignorance and on stereotyping, but the way in which we in Australia have got better on race is by meeting people of different races and realising that we all have so much in common that trivial differences are not really important.
It was also an era where homosexuality was a criminal offence. Can you talk a little bit about what it was like? In your book you describe it as an age of shame and silence. Was that another, like the White Australia policy, were these the things that instilled a sense of justice in you, to seek fairness?
I have to say that I'd never felt, as a gay person growing up, I never felt discriminated against in the class. I went to public schools, and therefore they were free, secular and compulsory. They were not religious. And I never felt that the other boys in the class were discriminating against me, because basically I knew the rules. The rules were you had to keep silent, don't ask, don't tell. That was the rule. But it was a very lonely sort of a time, and there was virtually no one that you could talk to. Even your parents and even your siblings, you couldn't really talk about it because it was so terribly shameful. And there are still some people in Australia who would like to go back to that era, but it's over. And people have to realise that just as my brother, Donald, was left-handed, and they tried to make him right with his right hand until my mother intervened, and I was gay, that was just one of those variations. People were, one boy was Asian, and people were of different religious backgrounds, and the variety is the essence of humanity, and in fact it's a strength. Charles Darwin teaches that we make progress as a species by the rule of variation, and that is just a feature of the human and other species.
One of your nicknames on the High Court was the Great Dissenter because of the number of cases on which you were the dissentient. It's interesting, a lot of young people are kind of encouraged not to speak up or not to kind of argue back. So I'm curious, from your perspective, what is the value of dissent?
Is it good to speak up? Yes, of course it's good. That's how progress is made. When I was growing up, Australians, including in schools, disrespected Aboriginal people. They regarded them as dirty nomads, uncivilised, who'd ultimately die out. We disrespected women. We did not treat women and see women as complete civic equals. We disrespected Asian Australians, or Asian people generally. We were ignorant about their long civilisation, and we certainly disrespected gays. We called them puffs, we disliked them, we had hostility, and all of this has begun to change. And why has it changed? It's changed because people are standing up and they say, this is me, this is who I am, get over it.
Do you have any regrets from those schooling years?
Well, I regret that I didn't do enough sport. Maybe if I had, I wouldn't be so tubby and I would have a six-pack. I regret not being as close to my parents and siblings as I should have been. I was just in my room studying. I was a swot.
I don't think you're alone in being a teenager who locked themselves away in their bedrooms. So I think that's a pretty widespread...
Yes, but what are they up to?
Well, yeah,
That's
not
the
necessarily
question.
studying, that's true. Well, finally, do you have one piece of advice for students today?
All of us have to think big now. We're not just living in Sydney or Perth. We're not just living in Australia. We're living in this little blue planet. Pluto is out there and we've just gone past it. There is a mighty universe, and the fact that we have atomic weapons and we threaten each other and there are dangers is really a very serious accusation of human beings. And I hope the next generation is going to be more insistent on human rights, more insistent on equality, more insistent on mutual respect, and more insistent on peace and security in our world. It's a little blue planet. We're here alone in this mighty universe, and we've just got to get used to that and try to make the world a better place.
Hey guys, if you enjoyed that video, click here to subscribe to our YouTube channel, or find more of our stuff at studentedge.com.au.